Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at J More Living. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. I want to remind everyone that all our shows are archived up on J More Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. So feel free to go dig back into the archives, find a show, find a guest, and take us for your runs, your walks, and even in the car. Today's guest is a commercial food stylist for the likes of Betty Crocker, Sara Lee, Campbell's, Del Monte, McCormick, and even locally to Baltimore, Eddie's Supermarket, and many, many more other recognizable brands. Let's give a big hello to Nichole Bryant.
Hi.
Hi, Nichole.
Hey, Dara.
Hey, listen. So what's on your plate today? Other than being a star on my show, what's on your plate?
Today's actually just the day off. I'm doing some content planning for my food blog a little bit later, but other than that, just taking a break where I can get it.
Well, everybody can find you. Let's see, it's NicholeBryant.com. Anything that they want to learn about you, and the information, your social media contacts will be floating up in the notes.
Awesome.
So my skills include food styling, and mine were more or less just for cookbook authors who were traveling. Your skills is digital media, print, packaging, video, TV, and everything in between. So what is an in-between?
I find myself doing mostly packaging these days. I tend to stay more in the commercial space, but I've been on jobs where I am gluing fruit to bikes. So it really it could be anything.
Well, I think one of the things what did you just do for Eddie's Supermarket?
So that's sort of outside my food styling world. That is more so my photography world. So I do their photography for all of their printouts and magazines. They actually just put some of my work up on a billboard, which was so cool.
Yes.
But that's when I shoot their food for a lot of their catering sort of stuff. So I actually have a little baby studio out of my apartment here.
Okay, and there's a puzzle.
Yes, I did the puzzle for them. That was a super exciting project. So basically they sent me a bunch of beautiful produce. I mean, crab cakes that are like half the size of my head. So good. I get them for dinner all the time now. And I arranged them on a surface. So it took me about 3 hours to get the arrangement right. I wanted to make sure it was difficult, but not too hard to put back together. It was 1,000 pieces. I heard it was quite hard. And then we shot it and they put it on a puzzle.
That's great. That's great. That's still available for
Yes.
anybody locally here in Baltimore. Eddie's is a fabulous supermarket. Where did your passion for food emerge?
I was so little when it started. I always knew that I wanted to be a cook at some capacity, and nobody could figure out why, because I come from actually a long line of women who don't cook at all. So I don't know if maybe I was just hungry. I was
It could
sick
be.
of Chef Boyardee or whatever it was. And bless their hearts, they cook more now after I've gotten out of culinary school and done the whole thing. But I just remember being a little girl and watching Food Network. And this was before the internet was a big thing. So I used to write down all of their recipes on little note cards and race the commercial breaks because there was no pausing at that time.
Right. So, and was there something on your thing about your grandmother's sauce or something about tomatoes?
Yes, the one recipe she did make, the one recipe, I think it came from her Italian background. So she makes this Bolognese and she cooks it all day on the stove and lets it cool overnight on her covered porch. I now know after culinary school that this is 100% not food safe whatsoever, but dang, does it make it taste better?
Well, it had a couple added ingredients after marinating overnight.
Ingredients or bacteria. We don't judge.
Right. When you were looking to go to you went to the Culinary Institute of America, and folks, that is like the Harvard to culinary schools. It is the premier school. Um, it's where you want to be. When you entered CIA, as they call it, did you have the thought to be a food stylist, or were you looking to be a chef? Did you know what you want?
No, so I went to culinary school knowing that I wasn't going to be a restaurant chef. Um, the long hours, oftentimes chefs work in basements with no windows, especially at that time. It just wasn't a very pleasant work environment. It was relatively toxic, especially for females. So I kind of knew that I did love and have a passion for food. I didn't necessarily know exactly how that was going to come out. I was thinking about food writing. I was thinking about maybe doing some research and development. I actually work with a lot of really awesome corporate America chefs in my food styling work. Um, but there are just so many other things. You can work in more of a science background. You can be a flavorist, a food scientist. So there's so many different things that you can do with food. But for me, all I knew was like food, not chef, though.
You're right.
And so I ended up going through culinary school, really, really loving it. And I'd started the science program there, thinking that that might be something that I would be interested in.
That's research and development, more or
Right,
less.
right. Well, those kids go on to do so many cool things. They open up fermentation houses, go into like super fancy restaurants and do all the sciencey stuff like the Alinea type, Thomas Keller type vibes, work in labs, all those sorts of things. So I thought one of those opportunities would have suited me pretty well. And I liked it. I was in my first year there, but they say that they have a really amazing career fair at the CIA, which is one of the reasons why I picked that school because they make sure all of those kids have jobs. So they say to even if you're in class, you're not looking for anything to go practice, giving a good interview. So I went and I met one of the chefs at McCormick, which is local to Baltimore. And we just got along really well. Great interview. Said thank you. He said, if I need anything, I'll give you a call. And I was actually on vacation 6 months later in Florida, which you can relate to now, Dara.
Right.
And I get a call from the chef, and he's like, hey, I know it's been a while, but do you want to do an internship with us?
That's great. That's great.
And I had maybe 6-8 months left to finish the food science degree. And I said, yeah, sure. School will always be here. Like, I'll go. Why not? And I never went back to school. So I really have McCormick to thank for my entryway into the food styling world. Because I remember I was kind of a brutish line cook type, just trying to figure out how corporate America works. And they actually had a food stylist out of New York City come in to style a photo shoot, one of their in-house ones. And I remember him asking me like, oh, would you ever have any interest in food styling? And me being like, no, that is way too fluffy. I would never do that. And then fast forward 6 months later, McCormick was like, hey, we don't have another internship for you. So you either be a contractor on our in-house content team and be the food stylist, or kind of going to go back to school. And I was like, I definitely don't want to go back to school. So I took the food styling job.
Okay, I've had some questions come in, and people who watch the show will know that the background's a little bit different. I am in Florida, and I have an assistant here who brought me questions, yada, 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 which normally I'm squinting to the side to see. Let's see, are your images primarily unretouched other than cleanup, or do you rely on digital manipulation to get your final image? Well, you're not the, go ahead.
That changes job to job. For example, I've done work for National Geographic where they barely touch it. almost no editing whatsoever. And then some of my packaging jobs, you look at it and it's more of a digital creation than it was from start to finish. So that totally changes. I would say in the commercial space, or in the advertising space, there's a lot more retouching. And then when you're in the editorial space for magazines, it's more so just, is there a spot on the plate of sauce that you didn't want there? They'll clean it up. They might enhance the shadows. You see a lot of that, but nothing crazy like you're seeing in the advertising space.
Yeah. Well, question is, where are you based? And I believe we've, let people know that it's Baltimore, but do you find your work locally or travel for most of your assignments?
Right. So I guess that was the hugest change with COVID is before I was spending almost a week per month traveling for work, mostly in Cincinnati. Lots of really awesome food photography places over there. But through COVID, I've ended up doing more Baltimore-based work, doing a little bit more locally, which has been awesome just to stay connected with the community. I'm actually still at McCormick a few days a month, and they're a local company, and they're awesome. I do work for Eddie's, they're local. But yeah, it changes month by month. Now we'll see how long it lasts, but I've been back to the work travel. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay. You had stated that you found getting into that food styling was a really tight-knit community. And how did you sort of break into it? I know you had the benefit of being at McCormick, and was it Len at McCormick?
Oh, Len actually did make a huge difference. So he's one of the awesome corporate chefs that I work with, but he connected me with one of your previous guests, actually.
Denise Baldwin.
Baldwin. Yes. So at that time, I was freelancing already, but I was doing it all wrong from a business standpoint. So I got on the phone with Denise, and she said, "No, this is what you should be charging. These are some of the things you should be doing before the shoot, after the shoot. This is how you make your money, and stay open." So that was a huge game changer for me.
Right. Denise, when I was a member of Women's Chef and Restaurateurs, they would have different stagiaires that were offered out to members, and one was to go work with her for a week, and I just never made it. But my food styling was more or less cookbook authors who were traveling. It wasn't to the level of what you're doing. Now, when we're talking about packaging and you're doing photographs for that, I'm assuming, and you can fill me in, that let's say the advertising department sends you sort of a graphic of what they're looking for. And it's not just anything that you choose to do, or they give you the option. How does that work?
Right. I would say with almost 100% certainty that I've never just made something up for a package. I'm almost certain. There's always a very specific, almost down to like a drawing of like, this is where for a fry package, this is where we want this fry to sit. And then we'll put it up on the screen and I'll do a layover and make sure it happens exactly the way. So that becomes the challenge of how do you create flow or an image that's just nice to look at, something that's just like easy to look at in such a tiny little space, making sure the food looks good. But oftentimes that's my favorite part about packaging is bringing somebody else's vision to life.
Right. There was a question, that a lot of people know that, the turkeys that are photographed are colored with kitchen bouquet, or the ice cream could be Crisco. When you're shooting for packaging, do they care whether it's the real product or is it mocked up to look like what the product is?
So that's actually changed over the past several years. I think in the past when they were, and I've never worked on film, but in the past when they were working on film, everything was so much slower. You could only shoot 2 packages in a day. So that food had to sit for a long time. And also nothing was really quite as sharp as it is now. So they would kind of have to use more fake products. Like you see like the motor oil for the pancakes or the Crisco for the ice cream. As time has gone on, not only does everything move faster, so I usually do about 4 packages in a day. So my food doesn't have to sit out as long and everything's so much sharper. So you'll know if that's Crisco and not ice cream. You
Okay.
can tell if it's fake. And sometimes you'll still see it in the stores. You can tell if a company hasn't redone their packaging in the last 15 years. You'll be like, oh, yeah, I see that's fake ice cream. And I know you haven't redone anything in 15 years. But for the most part, I use real food.
Okay. Okay. The real thing.
Yep.
I helped a friend out who was shooting for Giant Food. His person that he uses wasn't available, and it was like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and it was a week, and being in a truck and moving around, and it was all for film. And I went, I'm glad I never chose to do this as a living. I mean, it is rough, really, really tough. What has been your most challenging assignment?
Ooh. I don't want to single out any particular assignment. Also, after so long, they start to blend together a little bit. But I will say the hardest ones are the ones without kitchens. So it'll be, oh, you're in the garage. There might be running water. There might not be. We're going to maybe rent you a fridge, but maybe you have to bring a bunch of coolers, also pack tables, pack something you can cook in. I love my air fryer now because you just plug it in and go. Electric stovetops. Those are the type of jobs where I find myself physically working really hard and it's really sticky, oftentimes a little bit on the dirty side. Nothing glamorous about it.
Been there, done that. Got the
Mhm.
T-shirt. I managed the kitchen for the wine and food at National Harbor for 2 years. And we had no running water, so the water was in trash cans. And
Oh,
we had coffee makers boiling water. And, I had guest celebrities on stage, so we're constantly moving in and out. And I had to schlep my KitchenAid mixer. I mean, there was nothing there. Yeah.
yeah, those are always the harder ones.
The harder ones, yes, but
Mhm.
it had its own rewards, but we'll talk offline about that. You said that you're getting more into doing your own photography,
Yes.
but before I get to that, in the promo, I I did 2 promo pieces for you. One was a hamburger that you styled. Now, you didn't photograph it, but
Yes.
it showed each individual thing. It wasn't top. There was space between it. You saw a green screen behind it. Was it green or turquoise or something like that? How did you shoot that? Was something up on like a rod with pins, and was it blue screen or green screen as they use in the movies? Fill me in.
Right. Yeah. So that one was actually shot in Cincinnati by a photographer named Robert at Ron Hamilton Studios. And that was a fun one. That took about 3 hours, that shot. But basically, we kind of like jimmied it together with a bunch of like arms. And then the arm would have a little clamp on it that would hold a wire. And on the wire, you might use a piece of cardboard if it's heavy, or a clear piece of kind of paper. The name is escaping me what it is, but anyway, pieces of paper to kind of like create movement because I wanted it to look like it was naturally falling together. So it was important to us that it wasn't just all very perfectly level. So we basically just used whatever gave us the correct shape for the thing that we were floating.
So
And
it
then
was MacGyvered.
absolutely MacGyvered. And then a really talented top of the line digital artist went in and took out all of our wires and doodads and things like that.
Okay, so now I'll come back to the photography. You're doing photography. And, nowadays, rather than giving praise to the Lord at the table, we're giving praise to Instagram and taking that picture of the food that nobody can touch until you take the picture. Do you have some tips for people if they're going out and shooting digital? I mean, I'm working to light my questions. I have my little ring light, but it's focused on the question so I can see it. So tips for us photographers that are shooting our own food.
Okay. When you say photographers, do you mean like people who are shooting their food at home, or do you mean like aspiring, I want to get paid for this photographers?
Why don't we hit both?
Okay. So if you're shooting at home, you made a really beautiful meal and you want to take a picture of it, I would go to a window as closely as you can, and then I would use something like a piece of paper, a white piece of paper, to kind of bounce the window light back on your subject. And then honestly, the iPhones these days are taking really great photos, and that would be my approach. Natural light is definitely a friend. For photographers that are looking into doing this professionally, I am still new to this world, to doing photography as a professional, getting paid for my photography. I would say the biggest thing that's made a change in my work is investing in flash strobes, and kind of getting away from the natural light and being able to control the lighting source and control your shadows and things like that. So that's, oh, and I can shoot at any time of day, which has been amazing, especially in the wintertime.
Right, and especially in that garage.
Oh, I know.
I know that sometimes, but I know a lot of the influencers here in town, and my hand's too small, but I call them stadium lights, and they have these big square things that they're shooting um, and lighting whatever it is, the food at the restaurant. I got my little ring light. That's it. And but then also it depends on your phone. I'm not going out and getting a Nikon or a Canon and getting crazy with it. It's
Yeah.
that, and I'll doctor it up. I use Snapseed, which I think for anybody, my recommendation, if you want to clean up photographs on your phone, get the app called Snapseed. And just remind people that we're here with Nichole Bryant, who is a commercial food stylist. And if you could be with anybody or share a dinner with anybody in the food community, living or dead,
Ooh.
or who would you invite? Who would you like to fix dinner for?
Fix dinner for, that would be a whole different story. I don't know. I might be
Okay.
too nervous to fix dinner for any of the greats. I make food look good. I don't necessarily make it taste good anymore.
Okay, so let's go. If you could have dinner with any of the culinary greats,
Yes.
local,
Yes.
national, dead or alive, whom would be at your table? Who?
Okay. Especially if they're cooking, I would say Thomas Keller. Only because at the culinary school that I went to, he was kind of like, his poster was like blown up on the side of like half of our buildings. He's like holding a stock pot and a chicken's popping out of it. I don't know if it's still there or not. It's been a while, but he was just like our hero at that culinary school, and still a dream of mine to go to some of his restaurants. Haven't been yet, but I'd love to, I don't know, pick up a few tips, maybe remember how to make food taste good again.
Well, I went through a cycle, and I know some other people have, when I became the foodie and loved it, and then start going to all these high-end restaurants. I would do it at lunch because it was more cost effective. And I had a blessing to be at the mini bar at the very early stages, Jose Andres, and he was fabulous and great. But I have found now in years that, you know what, I'm happy with just going to that new Chinese restaurant that has a great lacquered short rib, or the simpler foods are more exciting to me now. I appreciate the beauty and the work that Thomas Keller or Alinea or the mini bar. Mini bar was entertainment. It was just 23 courses. The first dish was popcorn in a little Chinese box that was dusted with a like a curry.
Oh, cool.
And then there was a perfume atomizer that had mojito in it. So you would spray that and eat the popcorn. That was first course. There was 23 courses. So mini bar still exists, folks. Definitely go, but consider it entertainment.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Okay.
I like having an assistant who brings it in. I'm not squinting. When you make food look good, do you find the visual might actually be better than the food itself?
So when I look at something like a stew or something like that, stews don't look very nice. They're very brown. They're very
Right.
cheesy. Sometimes they lack texture, but they taste delicious. So my goal is usually to make the food taste as good as it is, especially if it's something that's not so pretty. Like I spent 2 weeks working on frozen pizzas in the grocery store. Is frozen pizza great? Yeah. Does it look very nice coming out of the box? No. So I'm just trying to make it look as good as it tastes.
Look as good as it should taste.
Yes.
It's
Hopefully
right.
it does.
Okay, my last two questions. What was your most epic culinary fail?
There are so many, and they happen often as a food stylist that is usually doing way too many things at one time. I would say that I was notorious for blowing things up in the microwave when I was working at McCormick because they do not teach you how to use the microwave in culinary school. So I would be like things like blowing, oh, this egg could use like a little bit more cook on it. It's a little bit too yolky in the center. So let me just pop it in the microwave for a minute. So boom.
Yeah, it probably didn't smell too good either.
No. And I was working in an office building at the time. So yeah, I was slightly notorious for blowing things up in the microwave. But luckily I haven't had any huge fails.
Failure.
And I attribute that to my background in culinary school and just having a strong foundation.
Right. I want to remind everybody this is Nichole Bryant, who is a commercial food stylist and also burgeoning photographer. And you can reach her. Her website is NicholeBryant.com. And you can find her on Instagram, Nichole Bryant, but a double T at the end, Bryantt. And the last question, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
I think it's important to touch on how important it is to diversify as a freelancer in the food community. I know right now that food freelancing is super popular as a career option. And I've kind of learned, it's been about 4 years that I've been fully freelancing full time, that it's so important to not put all of your eggs in one basket. And I think a lot of people learned that over COVID. So that's when I took the food photography class and I started learning food photography. And I'm kind of just being careful to make sure that my photography is very different from the professionals photography that I work with as a stylist. So I'm staying in the digital space, kind of on Instagram, very casual, nothing too crazy, like 8 shots in a day, 10 shots in a day type work. And then in addition to that, I am maintaining a food blog on the side. You can find me Mindful Cooks on Instagram, shameless plug.
Okay, well, we didn't have that, so mindfulcooks.com.
Yeah, or Mindful Cooks on Instagram. So that's been my baby for several years, just kind of nurturing that and maintaining that as an outlet for recipes that I want to test out or honing
Right.
my photography skills, just something to practice. Maybe there's a new food styling technique I want to work on, and then you post it online and get the traffic and da 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 da. But basically that it's just super important as a new freelancer to not only pinhole yourself or pigeonhole yourself into just food styling or just food photography. Maybe just start a little blog on the side or something like that.
Yeah, right. Or do a video show.
Video show, YouTube, anything.
Live Instagram. Yeah, you can do that too. There's so much with Reels, and I'm not going on Snapchat, but I like the Reels, but there's so many opportunities. And I know that Instagram is trying to draw people away from the stagnant photograph and go more into video. So as a senior, I find it a little bit more challenging, but I'm doing it. I'm getting there. I want to thank you so much, Nichole. It's been great fun, and people reach out to NicholeBryant.com. And you have a great holiday season. You'll fade out. I'm going to go to some notes here to wrap up. And thank you again, Nichole.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, everyone. Next week, Chef Jordan Wagman. He's a podcaster of In the Weeds. He's a James Beard nominated chef, best-selling author. He's a cannabis culinary expert, philanthropist, psoriasis advocate, dad. Need to reach me at any time, folks. You can reach me. My social is at Dara Cooks. jmoreliving.com is the website. And my email is food@jmoreliving.com. As I've said before, these shows will be up on the Facebook page for Jmore Living and jmoreliving.com quite soon, and in the archives. As always, let me wish you the best of the holiday season, and may your plates always, always remain full. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Thursday.